sense it. It is you all! Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Salt and Sorcery. I'm so happy all of you are here today, and I know why you are here for my very special episode. It is another entry into the Seasons of the Witch series. The first one was a brief introduction and it sort of, gave you some longevity. However, we're going to be going slightly deeper into these subjects. We're going to be talking about, things like astral travel, things like spirits of certain names, all of that sort of thing. So I hope all of you are going to be, entertained by this. So, to keep with the spirit of sorts of things, I urge all of you to sort of, keep the spirit of happiness going, of kindness, of gladness, all these things. Yule is a special time of season because not only do we, understand and commemorate the spirits that have long passed during these very cold months, it is a time for us to, learn how to get in together, to learn how to meld together properly, and to, have a better community, a better close-knit group of friendship and relationships and all of those wonderful ships, that absolutely don't sink and burn. But no, I'm so happy, I'm so excited, and without further more delay, enjoy the next episode of Seasons of the Witch. Enjoy.
Don't forget to turn off your eye. Okay, Grandma. So
Don't touch yourself. You'll go blind.
your hands will become
Too late.
But yeah, I'm not a physical medium. I don't like to do that, so I'm most definitely more like I get images and stuff and stories in my head.
Okay. So is there a type of medium where like you sort of are you just sense energies? Like whether they're like something probably big, oppressive, something maybe small or light. Is that a thing as well?
Yeah, so that would be just like intuitive empathy. Empathy.
Okay.
We teach some classes here on empathy, and how to work as an intuitive empath. Empathy, but just in and of itself is something that everybody possesses.
Of course, yeah.
But to work with that intuitively, I think is when you see people moving beyond just their comprehension and understanding of other emotion, and actually being able to sense the energy of that person or that person, that space.
Yeah.
So, but I believe those are abilities that would certainly be kind of a part of the spectrum of mediumship as a spiritual gift. Yeah.
Okay, so as a spiritual gift like mediumship, is that something that I guess only certain people have, or something that many people can develop over time if they choose to do so? Or is that more so like...
I don't know. I think, Austin, you let me know if your opinion differs on this. It better not. But I think that there are some people out there that just seem to be born with a gift. Like they're just already dialed up or open. Now, having said that, that does not mean that other people cannot access that ability or develop that ability. I think anybody can be a medium.
To some extent, yeah.
I think it's a lot harder for some people because I think that when you want to explore a spiritual gift, a big piece of that is not only a process of learning, but also a process of unlearning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. I like Mike. I agree that there are some people who are just born. They're just born and they're already dialed up, and they're already there, and they're already in connection. But then there are... Why are you glaring at me?
Was I glaring?
You look like you're glaring. Yes.
I wasn't glaring.
But then there are some people who just... They can do it, but they can move. It just takes a lot of work. I will say that sometimes you're just not a medium, and that's okay. I had this experience with someone, actually, a few days back, where they were just going off on how they're a medium or they want to be a medium and they wish they were a medium and they wish they could see and hear dead people and have all these paranormal experiences and da-da-da-da-da. Meanwhile, Mike and I have been we've been hanging out and like...
We've been hanging out? What were we doing?
We've been laying in the bed and the fire alarm has gone off 3 times and we're like, oh, well, that's shitty. And so then we go and we unplug it and all this other stuff, and it still keeps going off. And we're like, what's going on? Turns out it was some dead folk.
Some dead.
It was
folk.
some dead folk. And when you're a medium, these things are attracted to you. And so as much as everyone's like, I want to see my grandma, I'm like, okay, cool. But you don't get to just pick and choose who you get to see. Sometimes you get to see grandma. Sometimes you get to see dead chick with a neck broken.
Okay.
You don't really get to pick and choose that. They show up and you get to determine it from there.
What's it like when you guys encounter a spirit with bad intentions?
I eat them.
How do they taste?
Excuse me, jeez.
Depends on the spirit.
The spirit.
I mean, as to, I guess to clarify, when you mean what it's like, when I encounter a spirit, and I'm sure this is probably a bit different for everybody. I would hope it would be a bit different for everybody. But when I encounter a spirit that I know, or I'm very quickly able, to determine it has malicious intent, there's that moment I think that we've all had where we've been sitting and we've been very focused on something, right? And we thought we were alone. Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
This last of this cough is just killing me. And we thought we'd been alone in a room, right? And then we get the feeling we can start to sense that there's someone else in the room.
Okay.
And initially it's not even there's someone in the room here that's gonna hurt me, right? There's just a sense of presence, like someone's standing behind me, right? And so it's initially, I think it's pretty innocuous in the sense that you don't really pick up on it. So sorry. So you don't really pick up on maliciousness, or you don't really pick up on evil or intent to harm, not initially.
Yeah.
I think that once you become aware of the energy, and in the process of doing that, you then make the spirit aware that you're aware, right? Like you turn around to look, right? Or you say something that lets the spirit say I'm here, right? That's when I think you start to pick up first on emotional responses.
Okay.
A lot of people I think feel, you get that, you get goosebumps, or the hair on the back of your neck, your hackles go up, right? Or you start to feel a little bit of maybe a building sense of anxiety, or a little bit of a fear.
Yeah.
From there, it could move into other things like anger.
Okay.
If you tend to be a physical medium, from that point on, you typically start to get physiological responses. You'll start to get pains or sensations in your body.
Okay.
Those are usually the warning signs I've gotten for malicious intent coming from spirit.
When I get malicious, the warning signs I get is I'll usually, my spirits will usually let me know.
Okay.
I usually will get certain physical triggers. But most of the time I notice that it's almost like I become hyper alert, or vigilant, not just physically.
It's almost like a trauma response, right? Where you hear about people that they're hyper vigilant.
Yeah, but it's not
they've
just
been through some shit.
Yeah, it's not just hyper vigilant, physically.
Yeah.
I become very keyed into the environment. And
Okay.
I start to scan. And so my immediate response when I pick up on something malicious is I start to scan and I start to pick apart. And when I start to do that, most of the time these energies or these spirits can pick up that I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And then from there, they usually make themselves known, or they go, oh, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah.
But like I said at the beginning, my usual statement when I pick up on something malicious, when I start to get that thing is, you have two options, leave me the fuck alone or I'm going to eat you. Those are your options. There's no in between. And then usually we move forward from there. We're okay.
Okay. So is mediumship itself a craft or a practice? Or is it something different?
I would define it as a talent.
Yeah.
Talent?
And it is certainly a skill that you can develop. But I would probably, with those two things, I would define it as an ability, or I don't know that I would technically qualify it as a craft. I don't know, in that most of the time, other than developing your ability to actually just do the thing, there really isn't an element of craft there.
It's almost like a passive ability that you guys have, I guess. I guess like a passive skill. It's just there.
Well, in a sense, I mean, because I think of the nature of the work that Austin and I do, and because we've been at this for a long time, I think that for the most part, we tend to kind of, what's the word? We turn ourselves off
mediumship,
like day to day. Like I'm not always open and
no,
ready to receive.
but we're always
Okay.
aware.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Mediumship, I will say, is I think it falls into the realm of craft, not witchcraft, but like a craft, because anyone can pick up and learn a craft. Anyone can pick up and learn how to play the violin. But if you already have talent or skill, it just comes easier to you.
Yeah.
Because anyone can learn to open up and glimpse something on a mediumistic level. However, those who are already talented pick it up and they go. And it's a matter of if they want to continue to develop it and become a master at their craft, or if they just want to, I know how to play a couple scales and I'm fine. Like I can play Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Okay.
You know? So I feel that as a medium, the true sign is someone who is constantly aware versus people who are only aware sometimes.
Okay.
Mike and I are usually pretty consistently aware. We might not be open for reading and we might not be open for communication, but like if we walk into a place, we can tell like, oh, there's a spirit here, or oh, this happened here, and we just kind of like pick up on that ambient noise and that ambient energy much quicker than most people would. But then you have other people who won't pick up on that ambient energy, but once they've been in there for a minute, they'll start to pick up on it.
Okay.
It's very much like, Dumbledore going into the cave, like, this place knows magic.
Yeah.
This place has seen magic.
Yeah.
That's very much Mike and this place has seen dead things.
Yeah.
That's kind of our jam.
Are there spirits that are really good at disguising their presence from you guys? They almost like they don't really want to be seen, but they just want to observe and see what's going on.
I'm sure there are, and I'm gonna say yes because no one can know 100% something all the time.
Yeah.
But most of the time when I'm not picking up on that spirit, or if I'm not picking up, or you're not picking up on that spirit, then that to me just is our spirit's way of saying like, you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, not this one. Yeah, you're not the one meant to communicate with this.
Yep.
Yeah. What kind of spirit do you think is capable of, I guess, disguising itself in a way where it's like you're almost like oblivious to it, but you see maybe like the residuals of like there was a spirit here earlier, but we never saw it or anything. Like we're not sure why.
I think most of them that we work with regularly or have encountered regularly would have that capability. And
Okay.
Fae spirits are very good at that. I would say most demonic spirits and even angelic or Grigori spirits would be good at that.
Okay.
Deities, even.
Deities for sure. Yeah.
Trickster spirits.
Oh, what is that?
They're fun.
Yeah. Well, a trickster spirit, a real trickster spirit, most of the time is not malicious. They're just doing what they do.
Yeah.
They're tricksters being tricksters.
It's like chaotic neutral.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. Like I was do
what they
having
want.
This interaction with someone not too long ago. She was in the study group this last week, and she and the question came up around trickster spirits, and she was obviously concerned about trickster spirits. And as I was talking with her, I noticed that she had a pattern on her shirt that had Kokopelli. And I like inside was just dying at that because I'm like, you're so concerned with trickster spirits, and you are blasting one on your T-shirt right now. You have no idea. Like Kokopelli is a trickster spirit, and so it was pretty funny. Anyway, yeah, I go there because I more and more I don't really know what really even technically could be classified as a trickster spirit, because most of the spirits that we run into and interact with regularly have that within them. They're all capable of that.
Yeah, they're all capable of being tricksters if they want to be. And I guess to that point with the shirt thing, is it also a possibility where I guess an image of something you have can sort of invoke or a spirit to there? It's like, hey, is that my calling card? Am I supposed to be here?
I think so. Like in that situation, if she put that shirt on at the start of her day, and she looked at the mirror or she focused on that, that whatever that image of Kokopelli on her shirt, and she consciously issued some sort of like evocation. Or something to that spirit, saying like, as I wear this shirt, I want you to manifest in my life. I want you to be a part of my life today. I want you to and the space was made there for that, and there was an expectation. I think that would very much become her reality that day. I think that she would definitely feel the presence and the energy of that spirit. And I think we see that supported by most of what we do in our other kinds of craft, right? That's one of the reasons that we incorporate things like seals and sigils in our work,
Seals,
right? You know, even iconography for the different spirits and deities that we work with, right?
Mhm.
The idea is that I have this statue of this particular goddess on my altar,
Yeah.
and it is meant to be not only a space holder but a doorway for that consciousness potentially. You know, depending on how I work with it.
Yep.
And so, like that dynamic you guys have as mediums when it comes to the spirits, does that necessarily change? I'm assuming it would if you guys are astral projecting, or I guess astral traveling. I think some practitioners mention how it's like, for example, they don't venture unless they have a companion with them as they're traveling through the astral realm or so. And then they mention how there are some places where you go and some of these creatures or spirits are very bizarre, very weird looking. You don't really know what their intentions are. That's why they travel with a guide of some kind. So, I guess, is that dynamic sort of the same from what they say when it comes to you guys? Like, I guess when the concept of astral traveling comes up, is your interaction before when you were in the physical with these spirits, which is a certain way, now different since you're, I guess, a bit more, I guess, closer in like, contact or something like that? Like, how does the dynamic change from one realm to the other?
Oh, am I going? Okay. I think that I would say the dynamic does change because when you're in the astral realm, I think that the benefit to connecting with spirit in a mediumistic way, as you are like just up and moving about the day in like a waking state, right, is that you have so much more control over what that is going to look like. You know, if that spirit gets unruly or starts to become a problem, if you are an experienced medium, you have what you need to be able to say, no, we're done.
Yeah.
Right. In the astral realm, while you can still do certain things to protect and to create distance or to remove yourself from a situation and encounter with a spirit that would maybe be something you didn't want, the we'll just say like the things are a little more equal in that situation because you're dealing then with a situation and you're in a space where that spirit in essence has just as much power as you do over what is physically happening in that space.
Yeah.
So it would definitely be a different experience.
Yeah. And if you weren't, I guess, in your power, and like let's say maybe like if you're an inexperienced practitioner or maybe a medium and maybe you astral travel projected by accident or whatever, then what then happens if maybe they encounter a spirit with ulterior motives? Like is there someone there ultimately like watches what's going on, like maybe like does an ancestor interfere, or is it where it's like where you are, I guess, where you travel, like if you were to decide to just pop up here in your spirit or somewhere else, if someone did that shit by accident, how would that interaction then, because obviously they're not experienced enough to deal with that situation. Can they just recede back into their body like this and just wake up, or can they be sort of, I don't want to say detained by the other spirit, but maybe like afflicted somehow, you know?
Anything is possible with black magic and Jesus on my side. But really, most of the time when we travel, even if you're doing it unknowingly, you're going to have your guardians with you. Okay. Everyone has a group of spirits around them. No matter who you are, no matter how spiritually numb or dead you are, you have guardian spirits around you, guides, ancestors, all that stuff.
Even if you're not consciously aware of it.
Even if you're not
even in the
consciously
astral
aware of
realm,
it,
you may not be consciously aware that they are with you.
Exactly.
Or watching you.
Exactly. And so they're going to be there, and they're not going to allow something to happen to you unless it's for a damn good reason. So if you've wandered yourself off into some place that you're not supposed to be, and
throw me under the bus.
Me too, girl. Where you're not supposed to be, and you went there willingly, chances are they're gonna let you figure it the fuck out. So that you can learn. However, I am going to say that most of the time when people wander off into different realms and they're unknowing about it, it's a good chance that they will be pulled back to their body because their spirits pull them back. Can someone be detained, or a portion or a fraction of this person be detained somewhere in the astral realm? Yeah. I mean, we see that happen with, soul splintering or soul fracturing or spirit fracturing or whatever that is. But those things can be remedied with simple cleansings, with simple, psychic hygiene, a good ground center in a line. Hell, I mean, going and getting an hour-long Reiki session will basically pull you back to where you need to be if the Reiki master knows what they're doing.
Okay.
But most of the time, we'll pull ourselves back pretty easily.
Okay. And is astral travel, astral projection, I guess, without understanding, is it similar to someone having like very lucid dreams? Or is there like maybe like a degree or several degrees of difference between the two? Like, are those realms sort of closer together, or are they like?
They are. I believe that they all overlap in a sense, but it would have to be different. There is a distinction there because when you lucid dream,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going anywhere.
Right.
In a lucid dream, right?
Mhm.
And typically, if you are skilled at lucid dreaming, you're doing that with some degree of conscious control over what is happening within the dream.
Okay.
In the astral realm, you are projecting some component of yourself into something other than you, like you're
Mhm.
going somewhere,
Okay.
right? And you are not going to have the control over what you ultimately experience, not complete control.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a difference.
Okay.
Though I think that with the way that our minds work, when you look at things like our subconscious, the unconscious component of our being, and the way that overlaps with our spiritual self,
Mm-hmm.
I think that they do certainly connect.
Okay. Yeah. Because like I've had dreams, for example, where like let's say I'm in a situation where I have certain powers or whatever, but then I'm in situations that I'm in places I don't know. I'm like, I don't know this area. I don't know why I'm here. But then it's like, how do you know it's not just your mind creating these places as a way for you to like sort your shit out? Like it's almost like I don't know.
I was gonna get really meta and chaos magician there in an answer.
You know, it's
So
it's because I'm just like, because it's like when you're astral traveling, you're essentially going to a different place that's not bound by your mind. So it has to be some place that's sort of outside what your mind's capable of, you know. Yeah. But then how do you know your mind is capable of not producing that sort of thing if you're there in person? You're like, you know, I've had dreams, for example, where I'm like a badass witch. I'm pulling people into the ground, throwing them across places, or like I flew with Peter Pan. A couple, which was pretty awesome, you know. But then a tornado always comes. It's very persistent. I don't know why. It's always tornadoes. Fuck them. It just sucks me in. It's in the background. It comes towards me. It's a fucking tornado. You're gonna be scared. You get sucked back. You wake up like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know. But how do you know then the difference between somebody that's astral traveling versus someone that's having a very deep lucid dream experience, like Inception level shit?
The only thing that I could really probably throw out to answer that would be when you're astral traveling, you're going to be having interactions or experiences that are going to be beyond your conscious mind's ability to fabricate.
Okay.
You know, in essence, you are going to find that you have traveled somewhere in the astral realm that you've never physically attended. You've never been to this place.
Okay.
You have no direct experience of this place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and yet somehow through the process of astral work, you've been to this place and you can identify physical characteristics of the place.
Okay.
Right. So typically there is something on the back end of the experience that would be, I think, confirming whether or not this was just an internal thought process or dream activity, as opposed to something like astral travel work, spiritual experience.
So how can someone, from what you understand, can sort of, I guess, develop the skills in order to better astral project? Because there's different practitioners have a different way of saying this sort of thing. They say, well, you have to do certain meditations, or you have to lay in bed and then train your mind when you get to a certain REM level to then use that sort of get in there. You can use your mind palace to travel deep into your subconscious. How you're, you know,
the mind palace,
you know, or for example, like some people, they use certain types of herbs and oils to help enhance your body mind in order to, you know, well, I guess from what you're able to share, what you care to share, what is something that I guess you could probably give as a tidbit, like, well, if you guys want to be better or have the opportunity to astral travel project, this is what we would recommend.
Go to sleep with something unfinished.
I also would say one of the things I have found helpful, and actually we were just talking about this in last week's mediumship development group. I often teach people when we talk about astral travel work. I often teach people or tell them, like, when you go to bed at night, to do everything you can to submerge your sense of awareness, even your conscious awareness, to do what you can to submerge as much of that awareness to a space. And this is just in the process of developing your ability, right?
Yeah.
Because once you've got it down, you're going to be able to travel and go wherever you want to. The laws of physics don't apply to the astral realm. But in developing your ability to actually sit as you lay in bed at night to tell yourself a story around, like, tonight as I sleep, I won't actually be sleeping. Tonight as I sleep, I won't actually be sleeping. I'll be traveling. I'll be going to this place. I'll be going to this place that has this particular building. I'll be going to this place that has this particular body of water. I'll be going to this place to see this very particular person. And when I enter this place, I'm going to walk in and there will be a chair in the room that will actually be this color. The chair in the room will be this color. The chair in the room will have a pillow of this color. The walls will be painted. And to actually kind of tell a story and to go through that and to get as detailed as you can. Now, what makes that good in developing your ability is that all of those details, all of those things, that should actually be a real place that you have memory of. And so I tell people, like, to even get on the internet and, like, do searches for, say, like, random, like, rooms on, like, an Airbnb site. Just go in and look at this space, and you've never physically been there, but you have a visual idea or a memory of what the room looks like, and then to utilize that in the creation of your story, and to go through and to run through that story, and if you need to and you're still awake, run through it again and repeat it again, so that this becomes almost like kind of like a mantra, something that runs through your mind as you move from conscious awareness into deeper states of awareness. So that's one thing that I found has been really helpful. Another thing that can be really good, and it's a very similar thing, but you actually, like, have the picture of wherever it is you want to go, and you sit and you hold that and you let that needs to be the last thing that you see before you close your eyes. And even then you take that into a mental image into your mind, and you hold that in there, with the idea that this will not only be a place that I go, but when I am there, I will have this particular experience in this place. Right. Another thing that I found has been really helpful, kind of utilizing those things, is if you can think of a kind of what I call like a testing ground for your development, right? To travel to some place and to have a buddy. It's always good to have an ally or a buddy when you're doing these kinds of things, and I mean it like a human person. But to have somebody that loves you, that's open to these kinds of things, and to make the purpose of your astral travel, like, I'm going to go and visit this person. I'm going to go to this room in their house that I'm familiar with. But to ask them to change a particular detail in the room from at least the last time that it was there. Tell them to maybe, like, take a picture off the wall. Like, last time I was there was this picture on the wall, and I remember this picture there, but for tonight, take it off the wall. Or maybe set, like, a particular cup, in a bright color that I'm likely to notice on a shelf where it wouldn't normally be found. And then to go and then to do your exercise, and as you come back the following morning, when you wake up, you come back out of the experience, to then immediately document or to make as many mental notes as you can around, like, these are the things I experienced, these are the things I remember seeing, and these are the things that I know were different about this space than, say, the last time I was there.
And since we're on the subject of astral travel, I had a pretty funny question. Let's say you're in a relationship, and you astral travel, and you fuck a stranger. Is that cheating?
I'm gonna say no.
No.
I'm gonna say no.
Covering your base.
I think a lot of that, just to be clear, a lot of that, I think, is going to come down to, of course, intent. Like, was it your intent to travel and meet someone for a sexy rendezvous in the astral realm? Right? Because if that's the case, and I'm like, maybe you're a cheater. But I'm gonna think probably not. No. I would have to say no. That shit happens. Yeah, I mean, that's a funny question, but that shit happens.
It does.
I was like,
you're a real hoe in the astral, from what I
No, that does happen, and as someone who was a teenager, so here's the thing,
scandalous.
In the process of trying to hone my astral traveling ability and astral projection ability, I did this with my very first ex, and I actively, like, went and we And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to have this experience. This is
Oh,
just
they were involved. They
They were
were
involved.
aware.
Yes, they were
Oh,
involved.
okay. You said ex. I thought maybe you would. I was like, you wouldn't hag road your ex. Good lord.
But no, I did hag ride him. So I went and we had sexy times, and we woke
Feeling
up.
a little jealous over here.
I was 19. I wasn't even 19. I think I was like 17 at this point. I was still in high school, man. And when we came out, I, did normal good morning, and we
Sorry.
talked about dreams. And he had a dream that I bottomed for him.
Okay.
And
What does that mean?
I also intentionally was like, I'm going to bottom for you astrally.
Mhm.
And both of us had wet dreams.
Mhm.
So
That brings to mind
Sorry.
a lot of things.
Sick joke about ectoplasm moving through my brain. Anyway.
Slimer.
Right, yeah.
You got slimed.
oof.
Yeah, you slimed your underwear.
No. I remember. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Marshall, the Witch of Southern Light.
Yeah.
He recently put out that book,
Yeah.
Cunning Tales. I
Mhm.
read it. It's a beautiful book of tales and stuff. And I think one of the stories mentions about how there was I think a woman, and she witnessed a man astral travel through the chimney, so she went to follow him, and they went towards I think a wood where I think like the man in black was playing I think an instrument of some kind.
Mhm.
And so what Marshall detailed in the story was essentially like they were pretty much just like in their free, like almost like total freedom. And so at one point she like grew a dick and was like fucking him as if like it was like the roles
Yeah,
reversed
yeah.
because like and it was something like that, and it was like this crazy experience or whatever and things like that. But I wonder if it's like a Baldur's Gate bear situation too.
Oh, I don't know. I
That's
think I don't know. I think because of the when we're traveling through the astral realm, when we're in that plane,
We're
of
much less
existence,
inebriated.
we're inebriated,
Much
inhibited,
Inhibited,
much less
yes.
inhibited,
Much less inhibited.
much less
Sorry.
inebriated. Good
Yeah.
lord.
Sorry.
drunk bear too.
Jeez. No. But I know. I think that
Very tired.
we have the ability to we shapeshift very easily
Okay.
in the astral realm, and so there's no reason that you couldn't, depending on the circumstance you found yourself in, that you couldn't absolutely manifest as a different physical sex, as a different gender representation.
So does that mean that I can?
You don't even
manifest
need to
as
be-
Chris Hemsworth.
You don't even need to be human.
You could
Why
be
would you
Thor.
why would you want to be Chris Hemsworth? Ugh.
I want to be Bear Thor from
Not
the
Bear.
God of War.
I know.
Bear Thor is where it's at. I was like,
Chunky Thor was all
I
right.
was like,
That's
Boar.
probably the
Boar.
only time. There you go.
There you go.
I think Chunky Thor was the only time I was like,
I get it.
I would hit that Hemsworth.
Yeah.
I would play with his hammer.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. And that kind of reminds me too, because I think I was having a conversation with a cousin of mine. So I'm like,
Yeah,
You're
we're,
probably-
we're not limited to
No.
the things that we are when we're in tangible physical form. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Okay. Okay. So, I think I sort of just want to jump around because I feel like the conversation is just naturally going down this route.
Yeah.
Let me see. I think I don't know if you sort of I'll throw it out there. Within our lifestyles, in regards to the craft or our relationships with the spirits, how does one know whether the experiences we have are genuine or a projection of the mind?
Can't it be both?
I think if you look at, yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm
I mean-
saying is basically just paraphrasing what you just said
Yeah.
very simply. I think if we look at the oldest beliefs around traditions that we would, in more contemporary, lingo, we would refer to as things like, traditions that were shamanistic in origin or more folk magic based kinds of traditions, right? Which all were the roots of what we identify as witchcraft today. All of those. I think if we look at those things, there is in many of those practices and cultures and traditions, there is an idea that because everything that we experience is going to be based off our perception, our awareness and our perception of the experience,
Mm-hmm.
that it's all, in essence, it's all true.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why a lot of shamanistic practitioners, when they are dealing with people, people are brought to them who are dealing with really serious mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
and doctors are saying, well, this person is seriously mentally ill, they're crazy. The shamanic practitioner or the folk magician will look at that person and say, yes, I see this, but I can also see that this person is in the middle of a very powerful spiritual experience,
Mm-hmm.
and they are the same in a sense. So I think that in answering that question, I think that it is, I think it's both. I think it has to be both because it's so much rooted in our perception.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not to say that mental illness gets to go untreated.
Oh no!
Right,
no,
of course,
no,
of course.
not at all.
Mhm.
You know, I'm bipolar type 1. I wake up, I take my Cymbalta like I'm supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
I do the things. I medicate the way I need to medicate. But I've also been through therapy and I've been through all those things. And so, yes, whilst I have had the interaction with the individual who is simply just out of their mind, I've also had the interaction with the person who is out of their mind, but also that is exacerbating the underlying spiritual issues.
Yeah.
And so we have the ability as witches, as practitioners, as healers, to help alleviate that, so that way they can actually get along the path of healing.
Yeah.
Holistically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is a holistic approach. When you're dealing with a situation like that, that's an individual that needs to be working very closely with their therapist and or doctor, and on the side maybe also going and meeting their folk magician, witch, or whatever practitioner they may be, right? So, yeah, I think the distinction there, because we get this question a lot from a lot of people who, many of them over the years as we've interacted with them have expressed, that I have, in explaining this, they'll tell us like I am diagnosed with like DID, or I have hallucinogenic,
schizophrenia,
something, and so and they struggle, these people, and I think that they feel a sense of fear around their spiritual gifts because for them it sits so close to the edge of whatever that mental illness would be, right? And I think that in having that discussion, I think that the answer that we often come back to is that the only time, rather than worrying about whether or not it's real, or rather than worrying about whether or not it's just a component of your mental illness, it's better to instead look at the manifestation of what you're experiencing. Is it something that you are experiencing that is legitimately nourishing your soul and your experience of life? Is it an experience or something that is happening that is genuinely enriching your experience of your life and affording you, in some sense at least, deeper understanding, deeper meaning, in some sense, again, maybe a better balance in your life, right? If it's doing those things, then it doesn't matter, and you probably really maybe need to spend less time worrying about, is it real or is it mental illness, right? If it's not doing those things, if it's something that is, I think, trapping you in limiting or self-destructive patterns of behavior, if it's something that is rooted in fear, in other negative manifestations of ego, whatever it may be, right? If it's something that is a limiting or harmful kind of thing, that's when I think it really needs to come down to like, I need to make sure that my mental health is where it needs to be before I continue with this, or before I put any more energy or focus on this.
Yeah. Okay. And I think the issue, before, I think when Austin mentioned it was both, I was like, I can see it, but then a part of me, it goes to other people, like if you're a questioning mind, someone that's a bit more skeptical, they would say, well, no, it can't be both. It has to be either one or the other, because it's too much of a gray area. Yeah. Like, I think, for example, when I can think of is, for example, I was having a dream. In my dream, I was in a parking lot, and there was a monarch butterfly in my hand, but it was pretty large for its size, and when I was trying to shake it, it wouldn't get off my hand. It was almost staying attached to it, and then it turned into like this whirling brown ball of mass. When I woke up, it was like this in front. It was in front of my face. I jumped out of the bed. I looked at it. It was still there, violently shaking, or whatever. A couple blinks, and then it's gone, or whatever. So, but in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure that was a hallucination I had, because I broke right out of the sleep. So I guess half my mind was probably still maybe sleeping or something.
Yeah.
But I feel like those sort of things are important for some people that sort of, I guess, come from maybe like let's say a religious background where they didn't have anything real, they're seeking something real.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they're looking at claims of, spirits or anything else like that, they don't necessarily, I guess, want to take the chance of possibly wasting their time even more in something spiritual, metaphysical, if it's not going to convince them enough for that, if it's not real. Because otherwise it just seems just like religion to them.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think that comes down to, on a very individual or a very personal level, that's going to come down to a lot of issues, I think, of faith.
Okay.
And what you believe in.
I'm very much a believer that we need to approach things in a holistic manner, which means you need to take your meds, but also go see your faith practitioner.
Well, and I think, and when we were talking about this earlier, I think it's always good, I think, to be to maintain a position of skepticism.
Yeah.
I think it's unhealthy for any of us, anytime we have an experience like this, to immediately go directly to the spiritual.
Yeah.
Right. It's
that's
not
called
that,
spiritual psychosis.
It's not that. Or at the very least spiritual bypass. And that's not that couldn't still potentially be what it is, right? But we need to look at all of the potentials prior to that. Like, what else on a very mundane day-to-day level could maybe be explaining this, right? And be kind of, I would say, even be scientific a bit in the way that we look and analyze those situations, right? But I will also say, though, in looking at the example that you mentioned, I think that these kinds of experiences and the question that comes up in many people around, like, is this a real experience? Is this a dream? Is this something like, I think that in addition to that being an issue of our personal perception, because our perception dictates our reality.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that it's also fair for us to say that the definition that we have, what we define as a reality, I think is probably not as set in stone as maybe we think it is.
Okay.
I think that the physical waking world that we exist in overlaps with a lot of others.
Okay. So I kind of want to jump into maybe a slightly different topic. We spoke a lot about astral travel and things like that, and there are more things I guess I could ask, but I think just to move the conversation a bit differently. Would you guys mind explaining to me, I guess, what you guys can define as what a premonition is? If these are realistic things, or if there's maybe something else that's like motivated by something.
I think a premonition is the intuitive message or a psychic message that is received by someone who has that capability.
That was a very non-answer.
A premonition can be a warning. It can also be it can be a warning, it could be guidance, it could be direction, it could be whatever. But I will say that part of the reason I'm having a problem with this is because there are plenty of people who are like, oh, well, I had a premonition. And they're like straight to, Phoebe from Charmed.
Sorry.
Straight to Phoebe from Charmed, premonitions. Like, I know this is going to happen and I'm meant to prevent it. And it's like, are you? Well, if I'm not supposed to prevent it, why did I receive it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because if you've received that, have you noticed that half the time when you actually intervene in your premonitions, the premonitions happen?
Yeah, regardless.
So it's probably just letting you know, like, you probably don't get involved in this. So I don't know. I think premonitions are a good thing and they can be used as warnings, but I've also seen where premonitions have caused and incited a lot of fear because the person who is relaying said premonition is just really fear-mongering.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
The answer I'm going to give you is going to probably be a bit more metaphysical.
Thank you. I'm very tired.
You take a break, sweetie.
Okay.
The first thing that I want to do is I want to clarify what do you mean by premonition?
Premonition is, from what I think I've read off of Google, it's almost like the ability for one to, I think, receive visions of a future event that's going to happen.
Okay, so purely visual. So it's
visual, yes.
Something that would be within the realm of, say, like clairvoyance, where there actually is a physical, like a visual experience.
Sure.
Okay. So I wanted to be clear on that.
There are different types of premonitions.
There are absolutely, because you're going to have people that will have visual experiences. You're going to have people that will have different kinds of physiological experiences. And the visual experiences are interesting to me because I think that all of us have the ability, just through processes of imagination and visualization, to be able to shape or form, images of scenarios in our minds, right? I think the big issue there comes down to the way that we, first of all, the motivation for doing such, and then beyond that, the emotional connection that we have to that experience when it happens. I think there are a lot of people, and we talk about this a lot with people, is that we have to always remember that anxiety is not intuition.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people who feel that they're experiencing premonition kind of activity are operating from a place of insecurity or anxiety. That can be often, I think, something that pops up in the way that people who particularly have been through repeated types of traumas, they can get to a point where they're constantly anticipating.
Okay.
And it's a defense mechanism to be able to avoid trauma is kind of what happens. So that's one of the things I wanted to qualify.
Okay.
Now, as to actual premonition activity, and when I say that my answer will be a bit more metaphysical in nature, Adam, as a metaphysician, as someone who is involved in the occult and these kinds of practices, and this is not just my experience or opinion, but premonition is, I think one explanation of it is that it is something that happens because our spirits, our souls, that part of us that is not just this physical form, right? Our souls are beyond time. They are not limited by the time that we have to live in as I'm inhabiting this physical body in this space. And so what happens, I believe, is that some aspect of our consciousness has the ability to project itself forward. People have moments like this where we talk about like deja vu, right? Where they're like, I've been here before. And it's like, well, you really haven't, but you have a recollection of this moment. And the reason for that is probably because some aspect of your consciousness maybe moved either forward or maybe behind or maybe just in a slightly different direction, and was able to glean information or was able to have an experience of that moment in that slightly different space.
So it's almost like saying where your spirit or your consciousness sort of, traveled, I think, maybe in a point in time, because time isn't something linear. It can be almost circular time.
Exactly, yeah.
So it sort of peered into time, and so it came back, and so I just told you, at some point, you might see this happening. I mean, I've had stuff like that before, but I've also had it in points where, for example, this was back when I was in the church circles, and I have witnesses to this. I said, guys, I was sleeping in the van, and in my dream, I kept seeing yellow tops, blue jeans. I was like, guys, I think where we're going to go, and most people are going to have yellow tops and blue jeans. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, watch. When we get there, the majority of people had yellow tops and blue jeans. But that was something that you got from like a dream or something. And then other times where I had, like, let's say a dream, I was outside of, I guess, a 7-Eleven. For some reason, it was nighttime. I was under a sky in a city I didn't know, and with people around me. And I think years later, there were cousins I never met. We were in Canada to see the falls, and then we were outside of a 7-Eleven in a circle under a night sky or some shit like that. But then, does that qualify as a premonition, a visual premonition, or is that something else?
No, I think it's all that would absolutely qualify as a premonition.
That would fall into that category.
Yeah. I mean, people will have, because of their own abilities, the way that those kinds of gifts work. I think people will have precognitive dreams or premonition in dream. But that can be something that can also very easily come to you in waking, wake times.
Is there something similar to that? And like, let's say, if prophecies are a real thing, are premonitions and prophecies pretty much the same thing, or is it premonitions that you just get from a different force that's maybe not divinely inspired?
I think the distinction between something like a premonition and a prophecy is premonitions are typically still fluid in the way that you get the information, you see the thing, you have the experience with it, whatever it is, you've got that advanced knowledge, right? But premonitions, I think, are more fluid in the sense that it's just a glimpse of what could be. Where something like a prophecy is kind of more like this is very detailed, and this is a sequence of events that will lead up to this particular moment, and boom, this is what's going to happen. I think if we look at the works of, say, Nostradamus, right, who is documented as probably one of the more, one of the more well documented, seers that we see, in the last several centuries, I don't think people would see or would identify what Nostradamus did as premonition. You know, we very often talk about Nostradamus as a prophesier, right? You've mentioned, because you have a background, you know, in Christianity, you know, prophets like Elijah, things like that. These people who were very well known for their prophecy, right? You know, but it came down to like, this is an absolute as defined by this power, as defined by this God. This is what will be. You know, where again a premonition is going to be like, I kind of got a sense that this could be happening. Okay. You know, but I don't know that I want this to happen. Okay. So today I'm going to drive this direction instead, and I'll be able to avoid the car crash.
And a physical premonition to that point will also almost be like, someone's like, oh, it's going to rain today. How do you know? Oh, because like my joints hurt.
I mean, it could be something like that, right? It could also just be maybe you got some arthritis going on, right? Your bones or your tissues is acting up, right? Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, but there are other means of premonition. There are other things that can happen to us, senses that we get. You know, I think that God, I'm trying to think of an example now. One that I can speak to of a client many years ago who came to see me, who I was doing healing work for her at the time, and she came to see me because she was having some issues with back pain, and we were doing her work, and and she had this pain in this very particular place in her back, and there was no explanation for this. Like, she'd been in to get x-rays, she'd even had an MRI at one point because she thought maybe she had a tumor or something. Like, she had done everything medically to try to determine why this pain. You know, there was no history of anything that would cause this. You know, and then over, I think, during the time that I was working with her, because I worked with her, and while we were able to make some small improvements, the pain never really went away. She... I think a few months after seeing me, she got into a car crash, and in the car crash, she injured her back. In exactly that point. And she in speaking with her later, she told me, she's like, the pain that hit my body in the moment of the collision in that particular point in my back, that pain was exactly like the pain that I've been dealing with for months now in that point in my back. You know, and in talking with her, it only made sense that on some level, physiologically, her body was having a premonition of what was likely to occur. Yeah,
it's interesting.
So the problem with that is she didn't know what the source of the pain was, right? So she couldn't really do anything to avoid the accident. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's one of the shitty things about premonition is there's so much that is a
little vague.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And so I guess another topic we could just jump into, so pretty much about premonitions. Yeah. The concept of the afterlife is something that's very different to different cultures, even things like religions. You can sort of see some overlaps between certain religions as in regards to the afterlife and things of that nature. But I think when it comes to the concept of an afterlife, things like nirvana, heaven, Valhalla, or anything like that, is there any sort of, from what you've experienced, is there any sort of like validity to those claims as to almost like a place where spirits go to rest, maybe a place they move on to? Because in other questions is, where do spirits go when they move on? Is there a concept of a domain a spirit, if it's capable of creating, exists? You know,
So are you asking, is there an afterlife?
Well, we know there's an afterlife.
Yeah,
I think
it's more so. I guess like the claims about a heaven or a Valhalla. Like, I guess like a place where spirits of a particular inclination go towards after death when they do whatever they're supposed to do or something.
I think that those things can be defined by, one, the cultures that they come from. Because when you look at the Norse, such as the Norse practices like Valhalla, or the beliefs in Valhalla, that's actually where spirits go to like fight and duke it out and prepare for Ragnarok.
Right.
But then there's different levels and different places, and different tables as to where spirits go, depending on how they lived or how they died or what have you. And so I do believe that there is an afterlife, and I believe that the afterlife just kind of depends, the afterlife that we go to depends on culture. And I think that, again, is a perception that is centered around our spirit and what our spirit and our soul knows.
Okay.
So because I've died, and crossed over.
Quit bragging, jeez.
When I went over, at that point in time, I would have attributed what I saw as I crossed over to the Summerland. But also on top of that, if we look at different cultures and their concepts of afterlife, those are things that you would also find within their practices and societal cultures and beliefs.
So
like the Norse, they fought. Vikings fought.
right.
They did war. They liked to drink. They liked to party. So it only makes sense that afterlife for them would be an extension of those things.
Yeah. But are those things valid? Like, is it a real thing? That's what I'm saying. Is it like, if you were to die, could you see Valhalla? Like, oh, they're in Valhalla right now. They're having a good time. They're duking it out.
Possibly.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of that to me, I think, is one of those elements of spirit that is honestly beyond our ability to fully fathom as living beings. I think that there are universal things. I think that there are just aspects of the way that the soul progresses and evolves that we just are not really capable of understanding or really being able to know while we are still living in a mortal life. So, having said that, and answering your question, there is absolutely an afterlife. I think that we live in an abundant, I'm going to use a very, very new age term, but we live in an abundant universe. And because of that, because of the nature of how spirit works, and because we understand that once we move beyond this incarnation, that we are no longer limited by our perceptions of physical life and physical body and what that means, right? I think that because of that there is potentially any of a number of things that can happen to our souls after we move beyond life. And I think so much of that is really going to depend upon the conditioning and the personal belief that we carry. We were talking so much about how culture, particularly in the context of Valhalla, as a space for certain spirits to end up. Right? There's this idea, I think, that culture certainly informs so much of that for us, and it does, absolutely. But we've had more than one occasion where we've had a spirit come through in a seance who was the spirit of a very deeply religious, like here we get a lot of Mormons, right? We've had spirits come through that were devout LDS, and they come through to talk to their loved ones, and one of the first things out of their mouths is, everything I was told was a lie. That what I walked into when I got to the other side is not what the bishop told me it would be. And it's not a bad thing. There's no indication of that they're suffering or that they're in a bad place, but it sure as hell is not what they were told by the the clergy, right? The church, right? So that to me, I think, is an indication of how I think personal belief will always trump even cultural ideas of the afterlife. I don't know. I'm trying to think of situations that we've had enough communication with spirits over the years through seances and things that we've done, that it would make sense to me from that communication that there is a place after this one, but it almost seems as if it's in essence kind of just like, this is going to sound really horrible, but like basically like Earth 2.0. It's kind of like the soul just continues to live, albeit in a slightly different form
of existence.
But the soul continues to move forward. Most of the spirits that we talk to have kind of relayed that they're like, I'm still doing things. Like I'm still doing things. Like I'm not just floating around. Life did really continue on.
Is it possible for a spirit or soul to, I guess, create a domain in the afterlife?
I think so. We do that as we live. And again, I think it really comes down to perception and belief. You can see even in the waking world, you can have two people go to the same physical space and have entirely different experiences of that space based off of the emotional connection and the perception of it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that either of them necessarily created that space, right? It was probably there to begin with, but it does in essence kind of become a new space for that person based off of their experience of it, you know. And so I do think that as spiritual beings, I think that we do have the power to create spaces. Actually, we know we do that as witches, right? I can't think of you do this in a lot of the classes that you teach, where you'll take students into the astral realm and you'll actually create like a temple, an astral temple.
In my Awakening the Witch class, I created an astral construct that can only be achieved or gotten to, accessed by following a particular path working that I do, by following a particular steps, evoking particular spirits, going a particular path. That's the only way you can get there. And I had to tell my students at the beginning of the class, when we do this, you don't get to just run off down your own little trail because you can't focus. You need to focus. And several times I had students come back and they were like, I just kept getting distracted and I couldn't get to where you were at, but I went to this really other cool place. I'm like, well, that's great. That's not where you're supposed to be.
They didn't touch you, did they?
No.
So
no one's ever touched you.
So because of that, it would only make sense, and I agree with Mike, that on a spiritual level we'd be able to do that. And I think that especially if you're a person who's been working on a spiritual level in the mundane, so like doing what we do, I think as our spirits cross over, we'd probably be able to do that a little bit more effectively.
Okay.
I don't know if I go that far. I mean, while that would make sense logically, I also know that there are some people out there who are amazingly gifted at whatever it is that they do spiritually that have never had any kind of formal training or experience. Some people really are just savants when it comes to certain things spiritually.
Can a place like a domain be like an egregore? Can egregores be places and not just spirits or persons of themselves? So with that idea, could I guess a lot of people believing in something like a concept of heaven or even hell exist as an egregore in the afterlife?
Yeah. I think that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, I think that if you take people who are devoutly religious or involved in any kind of spirituality where they're told that one of the potential places they could end up could be, hellfire and brimstone, right? Like a bad place, right? I think that you're going to find that if they, through their own belief in something like that and their own understanding of who they were as a person and their value, their worth as a spirit, as a soul, once they move beyond this life, if they are, if they are just too entrenched in sin, right? And they're going to go to a place like that, I absolutely believe that can be something that they can create for themselves.
Wow. That was good. I told you it was going to be a delectable treat. Now, I sure hope all of you didn't find that stuff, too, surprising. But if you did, awesome. That's what I was hoping for. This sort of thing is for everyone to understand, the ways of life, how these certain things work. And if you are in certain spiritual circles, this is very enlightening for you. This is, very educational. And it's open. They know very well who I was, talking to, And I think it is important for all of us to, sort of hear these perspectives, see how they affect us, and whether or not these are things to, maybe change a few things of our beliefs or perhaps how we practice certain things, or to have a better respect for people that do. So, the next episode is going to be coming up rather soon, actually. I don't know if it's going to be directly after this one, but I had in mind to perhaps put another one of, episodes in between, like an in-betweener, like a little appetizer before the main course, before the final feast. So I hope all of you sort of, sit tight, just I don't know, just do things, in anticipation, let me know, tell me if you want something like this more often. To be fair, I did travel for this sort of thing, so that sort of things cost money, but just let me know what you thought about it, and stay tuned for the next one. You're going to love it. There's going to be a lot of things we're going to be discussing, maybe some pop culture things later. It's very fun, but I hope all of you enjoyed this, okay? Until next time.